What is some unique risk associated with the junk removal industry that business owners should be aware of?
Yeah, so I mean, the biggest one that we come across that most people just don't know in general is that, when you're actually in the act of loading and unloading as a junk removal company, that type of exposure goes underneath your commercial auto. So when you think about as a junk removal company, that's like 90% of what you do. So while you're in somebody's house, if you cause property damage while in their house, then that exposure falls underneath the commercial auto exposure. So that's one of the reasons why those rates kind of run so high. And then you have like huge discrepancies depending on what part of the country you are in terms of pricing. So the southern states tend to run the hottest in terms of, Florida might be 15 to 25 grand a truck. Texas is going to be, 12 to 18 grand. Um, uh, California might be on average 6 to 8. And then the Midwest states, you might be 3, 4, 5 grand a truck, 6 grand a truck. So it really differs quite a bit. And a lot of that is due to the risk exposure in those particular areas, whether you have a lot of uninsured and underinsured drivers because the cost of the insurance is just so high that the guy with the truck and the trailer just isn't going to pay the 8, 10 grand like they need to in order to properly insure, and so they're going to make excuses or do whatever in order to keep that cost down, like, oh, hey, no, my personal policy should be fine. And so that those types of areas where you've got a lot more of that, and the costs are so high, so it just becomes cost prohibitive to really get involved in the industry. um, like Florida and Texas and Louisiana is the worst. Louisiana's, you can't find a cost under 30 grand a truck. So, that's humping a lot of couches in order to get to a point where you can afford a premium like that. So you look at the cost can drive the rates based off of just the risk exposures of the area that you're in. A tornado uh, area versus a hurricane area. Hurricane's going to cause $1 billion worth of damage, whereas tornadoes might just be a couple million. So if you're in Florida or Louisiana and you got a hurricane pounding in, causing $1 billion worth of damage once every 3 years, hey, those rates are very different than any other part of the country. So I think in terms of what shocks people the most when I'm first talking to them is these average costs of commercial auto rates. And depending on what your specific risk portfolio looks like, are you starting with a truck and a trailer? Are you using dump trucks, Isuzu NPRs and Mitsubishi Fusos, or what kind of setup and operation do you have? And because the majority of the liability expense lies in that liability cost, maybe 70, 80% of it, it doesn't really matter if you've got brand new trucks or older trucks. The values of the vehicles themselves make up such a small component of the insurance costs that it's really in the liability. So I think that's what we find people are most shocked by when they get started in the industry. But if you take all the hundreds of junk removal companies and dumpster rental companies all over the country and the thousands of vehicles that we insure and divide it by the premium, our average client pays about 8,700 per unit. So that's a pretty good gauge for you as you're getting started to know and understand, all right, well, what type of expense are we up against? But yeah, it's wild. I mean, we'll talk to guys every single day. I'm talking to 10 to 20 people a week where we're just reviewing their current coverages and taking a look at mistakes that are made on their policies and the local broker doesn't know what to call it. They don't know how to classify the business. They don't know how to classify the individual vehicles. And so we see all kinds of mistakes made on the local policy by the local broker in terms of misclassifications. And like I'll share with you a really good example of I did a little mock quote here up for Toby's junk removal. So I'll share this with you. Let me see if I can screen share here and get this to work. Um, this is this is the Progressives website, and this is uh, this is what the local broker is going in and starting with when they go into quote. Do you have a DOT number, and are you required to apply for a DOT number within 60 days? Well, answering that question, yes, surcharges this policy anywhere from 10 to 20%, which can be a lot if you've got a couple vehicles or if you're in the more expensive state. And then from there, they go to enter the business type, and if you enter junk, nothing comes up. Junkyard's the only option, right? So the local guy doesn't know what to call this. They don't know how to classify it. Where so they just start typing in keywords that they think might be a match, and the real correct one for debris removal. For junk removal is going to be debris removal. Now, garbage, if you type in garbage, you'll see garbage and trash hauling removal. And those class codes can be okay, but in some states, they may have a little bit higher rate because you're getting in additional types of risk beyond just the debris removal class code. So it really, this is the first thing where we see a lot of things go wrong, and we see everything from trucker, commercial trucker, and that is definitely claim denial. We'll see classifications like janitor, and janitor is definitely not the right classification. And so this is where the first thing can go wrong, right? Now, as debris removal, we go into the next set of questions where things can go wrong. And the next set of questions is the actual vehicle itself, and how is the vehicle itself being classified. And when you go to click on adding a new vehicle, um, this is what they're looking at. This is what the local broker is looking at, and you can see there's so many options here, and they don't know. They'll see a junk truck and they might call it a box truck, and you would think, oh, box truck would be a reasonable selection, but that's the most expensive option. If you look at, like, I just ran a sample quote for a dump truck for Toby's junk removal here in Texas, and this is with the vehicle being classified uh, as a dump truck, which is the right classification for a junk truck. And you can see this premium comes out to 77,638. Here's everything else being the same, except we're calling the vehicle a box truck. And you can see the quote is now $8,677. So literally the difference of $1,000, and then you take that mistake and you compound it over time, and you're talking about thousands of extra dollars that you're paying in insurance just for that local broker not knowing and understanding what to call the vehicle. And the reality is the junk trucks are dump trucks. They've been modified. They're a cabin chassis that might be fixed, and then they've got an added dump truck feature to it. And we see this a lot with dumpster rental too. The dumpster rental classifications, the right classification is either flatbed, or garbage truck roll-on is also acceptable. But flatbed truck, I mean, your local guy's just not going to select that as an option. And so you can see how confusing all this can be to the local person that doesn't really know and isn't in these all day long and doesn't work in these every single day. We came across a recent sample client. Here's a guy who's out of Georgia, and and I blacked out all this stuff. So you can see they're paying 70 grand, and you get into the vehicles themselves. Here's a Silverado pickup truck. Okay, that all looks fine. That's fine and dandy. Here's an Isuzu pickup truck or a Mitsubishi Fuso, and it's classified as a box truck. So this is that exact example. And look at the premium that's associated with that, with listing that as a box truck.
Wow.
Now you have a trailer, utility trailer. This one's done correctly. Then you have a dump body trailer. And just by selecting that dump body trailer, which by the way requires uh, it requires a pulling unit with a pickup truck that requires a whatchamacallit, a not a, it's not a bumper pull, it's a fifth wheel or um a what is the trailer? Hang on, let me go back to my vehicles here. Um when you go to like add a Ford F-350, it'll say, hey, is that a fifth wheel or a gooseneck or a ball and bed or a ball bumper? Well, for you to be able to select as a dump or as a trailer, um, the dump trailer option, you have to be saying that the vehicle itself is a gooseneck. And this guy doesn't have any goosenecks. None of these trailers are goosenecks. So if you look in our quote that we ran in our sample quote, and you look at the costs associated with just a pull behind utility trailer that has a dump body. So here's a dump body that I did. It's more than 12 feet. It's got $3,000 in permanently attached equipment for which takes into consideration the dump feature, and then 11,000. So this is probably average that we see in terms of cost for a dump trailer, costing 14,000, like a big Tex or something like that. So in our example, this premium that's being generated as a result of adding this utility trailer, if you go to our rates, they're going to charge $400, maybe $400 for this particular trailer. If you look at the rate that so here it is, $447. So if we go back to our local guy is calling this a dump body trailer. There's a liability premium being associated with that. He's got the deductibles. They have the deductibles cranked up to 2,500, which is crazy. And then the comp and collision premium associated with this for a $10,000, $500 trailer, they're charging a premium of $1,253. So now you take that same mistake and you compound that over the amount of trailers that are on this policy. We got 1, 2 trailers, 3 trailers, 4 trailers, 5 trailers. Here's a 6th trailer, and this trailer is actually $2,753. By the way, all these trailers are the exact same trailer. So I'm not even sure why and how this premium is coming up double these other premiums, which is bizarre to me. You also have multiple different garaging zip codes on here, so I'm not sure why that is. But all these little mistakes that are being made by the local broker really add up. When you look at this example too, and this is from this week. This isn't from like, oh, hey, I'm going to pick out this is a guy I talked to on Tuesday that sent me this on Tuesday. So as you look at these kind of errors that are occurring, um, here's the here's the Isuzu dump truck. It's classified as a pickup truck. So again, that's a junk truck. I mean, that should be classified as a dump truck, no question about it. Now, obviously, that premium, we don't even know whether that's close to accurate because that vehicle is so far off. So this is the kind of stuff that we just see consistently, looking at policies, reviewing. So my proposal to this guy is to move this policy over to us, let us go behind the scenes and fix all this for him, get the right coverages, get everything classified correctly. But I mean, all these trailers should be 400 or 500 bucks, and so you can see it's not a ton, but it's enough from a micromanaging standpoint that these errors could be avoided, and and they can be fixed if you know what you're doing. If you don't, and you're just going in and guessing, or your team that you're working with, this could be a great agent. This insurance agent could be phenomenal, but they just don't know what they don't know. And if they're just sending this in to their customer service rep who's just processing, adding a vehicle, and they don't really know, and they're just guessing, these guesses, when made errantly, can end up costing you as a business owner thousands and thousands over time. And then you compound that year over year, and they renew, and you're just renewing with all these errors. It really adds up.
After
So
seeing all this, I understand now why you want to find a specialist like yourself in the junk industry. You know, you're an expert in this. You did it for so many years, and it really pays off for the people that are looking to get commercial insurance to go to somebody as knowledgeable as you. But another thing that stands out is you were telling me the prices down in Florida, were one of the highest, like, 25, $30,000 a year. How does that work out for like a newbie getting into the industry? And, let's say they're just using a dump trailer, they went with the dump trailer rather than the dump truck because, most people would assume that it would be a big price difference and the dump trailer would be a lot less. But after hearing what you're saying, it really doesn't have that much of a difference what vehicle it is. It's more of the area, that you're dealing in. So how do people get around that? Like, how do they work that out? Because you don't have business when you first get into the industry, and now you're already 30,000, you're paying like $2,500 a month, so you're already in the red with that. So how does that work out for the newbies? How do they last?
yeah, you really have to walk. You got to crawl before you walk, before you run. So you got to get started somehow, and you got to work your way into it. And maybe you can't afford a higher limit in the beginning. A lot of the commercial types of jobs that you'll get, like if you're doing storage facility cleanouts, or you're working with bankers and realtors. So it just kind of depends on where you're going to start and how you're going to get started. The normal residential client isn't going to ask you for $1 million worth of coverage. They're not going to ask you for all the endorsements. They're not going to ask you for workers' comp. They're not going to ask you for $1 million umbrella. If you're working in the commercial space, you might get asked for those, and those might be requirements. Like if you want to do a bank hoarder clean out, you better make sure that all of your insurance is up to date and you're compliant with their certificate request before you accept that job. But if you're just getting started and you want to grind, I would recommend starting in the residential space where you're not going to be asked for all that insurance, all those insurance requirements. And maybe you go with a little bit lower of a liability limit in the beginning to get started. You can see, like, this is a perfect example. Let me go back to my screen share here, and I'll share this commercial auto sample quote. again, you can see here's my Texas sample quote where we're at 15K for the year. Actually, if you sign up for EFT, you can save money there. There's all kinds of little ways you can save money on these policies. So instead of, 15,400, if we do automatic payments, now we're at 15,000 flat. So we're going to save $400 by just going to automatic payments. Um, but as you look at the differences between these two sample vehicles that I did this for, here's the Isuzu brand new junk truck. The premium for that's 7,800. The majority of the premium lies in the liability, and this might be an $85,000 truck, whereas this Ford F-250 might be a 40 or 50 grand truck, but still the premium's still going to be 6,500 for, and then you add another 431 for the truck and trailer. So
Oh,
this
that's
premium
okay, it's
70
very
grand
close.
versus 7,800 is not a huge difference. So when you're looking at, okay, well, what is the real cost difference between these two types of operations? It's not as extreme as you would think. And then if you look at, okay, here's our premium at $15,023, we're going to say, okay, well, we're going to drop this down to 500,000 in order to save some money, right? We don't want to we don't have the ability to pay these premiums, so we're going to drop this down. Here's an example of what that quote looks like. It's still 12 grand,
Yeah.
right? So the majority is in that first layer of liability and really lies in the liability. We've reduced this down a couple grand, but you're not saving tons and tons. So the question is, do you want to adequately insure your business as you're getting started, or do you want to try to, you know, and at the end of the day, you have to do you got to do what you have to do. So if the 15 grand just isn't in the budget and you can't make it happen, but you can make the 12 grand work, then you're going to go with the 12 grand just because it is what it is.